Okay, this is video number 3 of the iPad tutorials that we're going over here today. And what we're building is a sound mixer application. And in the last tutorial, we got our table view set up and we got it showing 10 rows with a static header, title for a header. And what we're going to do in this tutorial is we're going to set up our classes, our section class and our sounds class, to be able to prepare the way for a custom UI table view cell, as well as structure it appropriately in case in the near future we want to not hand input all of our sounds but use XML to import all of our sounds. So it's just smart to think ahead. What if the application became popular and we needed different ways to put in sounds without constantly doing updates to keep our users happy. And so it's just important to think about all these things before you go about building this kind of an application started here. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to make 2 new classes. We need to go to File, New, and New File, and we are going to make this an Objective-C class, and we're going to call this Sounds, and this is going to be of type NSObject. And it wants you to put it in your project file, so go ahead and click Create. And you see here my sounds.h and sounds.m appears. Now we also need to go to File, New File, and we're going to make a second class. This is going to be of type NSObject, and we're going to call this Section. Go ahead and click on New, create it there in the class, and let's drag these below so that it stays nice and consistent there. Okay, so first things first, in the sounds.h, we are going to put our properties here. And like the original application, it had an image or an icon showing what kind of sound was playing. It had a title, it had a description, and then we had to have a file name for it to play, and then a file type, whether it be a WAV or an MP3, and that's part of Apple's sound framework, which we'll get into a little bit later, but we do need to add these properties into the sounds class. So we're going to make a UI image as a property, and we're going to call this sound icon, and then we're going to make an NS string, and this is going to be sound title, another NS string, and this is going to be sound description, NS string. We need a file name and another NS string for a file type. Okay, and let's make this even so it looks nice and organized. Then we need to come down here and we need to make these properties, and we need to retain them in memory. So non-atomic retain, UI image, and we're going to say sound icon. And let's copy this to make it go a little bit quicker here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the next one is going to be an NS string. And actually all these are going to be NS strings. We should have copied the second line instead of the first one. Okay, and the first NS string again is sound title. The second one is sound description. The third one is file name and file type. So now you see that there are all these warnings right here, and we need to synthesize them. And what it means to synthesize them is we basically need to go to the .m and include these at the top of the file, saying, hey, these are part of the class. And then we have sound title, synthesize sound description at synthesize. By the way, this is a nifty little shortcut that I know of, and it can't hurt to say because some of you watching might not know. As you begin typing, for example, as I begin typing the next at synthesize, you can see that sometimes it auto-completes, and if nothing shows up, you can always hit escape to see what options you have available. And if you like it, you just hit tab and it auto completes for you. So that's a cool little trick that I learned over the years, I suppose. And so we are going to save that now as is. And so as an NS object, I'm actually surprised that Apple didn't include this in, so I'm going to copy it from my existing project over here. But in the .m, there should be an initializing function, and I thought that was auto included, but maybe I added it in. I can't remember, but nevertheless, it needs to be there. And so if we have anything that we want to initialize in it later, it's good just to have that code right there. And so let's go ahead and include that in our section.m here as well, just to get it out of the way. So we've got our initializing method, and just go ahead and pause so you can type that in, and because I'm going to go ahead and move on. Now we need to do the properties for the section. So if we come here to the section, basically I made this because I could have made an array of just the title, but I needed more than just the title. I needed the section to hold an array of all the sounds that were going to be in that section, because as the table view shows itself, it shows the section, and then I needed it to the rows basically repeat in the table view. So it's not, like it's index path, for example, section and then row. So if I have section 1, row 1, section 2, row 1, section 3, row 1, the row 1 of section 3 might end up being row 45. So it just made more sense to make an array of sections, and then I could say that way section 0, section 1, section 2, as I'm getting to the index count of the section array. And then the section array, or the section class, has a type in it, NS mutable array, which we're going to add, and I'll explain that here in a second. And that's going to hold an array of sounds. So an array of sounds objects, which is a class that we just built up here. So it's going to hold an array of these sounds, which means that as the table view is going, it'll pull index 0 for the first section, and then it'll pull an array of sounds, which will show each row or each sound in the section. So you'll see how it all plays out. It might sound kind of confusing without actually visually seeing it or watching us do it, but I just kind of wanted to pre-explain what's going on there before we get into building these sounds, or the section class. So let's go ahead and go to the .h, and we're going to put our brackets here, and we need an NS string, and this is going to be the section title, and then an NS mutable array. And an NS mutable array, kind of a tongue twister there, is basically an array that we can append or modify or as necessary. So we definitely need one of those, and so we're going to call this section array. Okay, and we're going to save that here, and now I'm going to put the properties again: non-atomic, retain, NS string, section title, at property, non-atomic, retain, NS string, section array. Okay, so we're going to save that, and now here's the warnings again because we need to synthesize it. So we're going to put it up here at synthesize, and section title at synthesize section array. Okay, so let's see what this is complaining about here. It does not match the type. Okay, that's right. Down here we made an error. And that's one thing that's really nice about Xcode 4.2 is it actually gives you syntax errors as you code them. So you don't have to compile to realize that you made a silly mistake like I just did right here. Just logically, as I built the second row, I thought, okay, NS string, so this should be an NS string, and sometimes that happens. And but fortunately, the new Xcode stops that way ahead of time. Okay, so in the master view controller, if we go to the .h of that file, then we have to set up our sounds and section classes. So if we come up here right under the @class detail view controller, we'll type in @class sounds @class section, and that's basically including the two classes that we just built, so we can start using all of their properties. So now right below that, we're going to need an NS mutable array, and what we're going to do is we're going to call this and sections. And basically, the NS mutable array is going to hold instances of the sections class, and that's going to be allocated. And in that allocation of the sections class, it's going to hold many instances of the sounds class in its array. So you'll see this when we put it all into motion. So let's go ahead and add the NS mutable array beach sounds and thunderstorm sounds as arrays. And so that should be all that we need. Okay, now if we click on masterviewcontroller.m and go up here to the top, we're going to have a little bit of work to do. So we're going to have to initialize all of these sounds, but first we need to import both the sounds.h and the section.h here at the top. So let me come up here and we'll type import sounds.h and import section.h. Okay. So now, if you come to the awake from nib, we're going to initialize the sections array. And so what that's going to do is that's going to hold all of the sections classes, and remember, or the sections objects. And remember, the sections object holds many instances of the sounds classes. It puts it all into an array. So we have many sounds objects which are stored as an array in the sections object, and then we have a sections NS mutable array which is holding the section class. So we can add as many sections as we want to the sections array. So let's go ahead and add that. We'll type in sections equals NS mutable array allocate init, and that's all we need to do to get the sections class initialized. Now what I did here in my code is I made these large noticeable lines followed by a title and another line so that I could easily separate the different categories of my sound initializations. And we'll just go ahead and copy this first line here. And now we know that everything below is going to be beach sound related. So we made, remember if we look in the .h here, we made another NS mutable array of beach sounds. And so we are going to say we need to allocate another instance of an NS mutable array and assign it to the beach sounds property. So NS mutable array allocate initialize. And so now I need to allocate my instance of my sound class. And so this, we allocate all of our sound class instances, and then we store them in the beach sounds array. Once we do that, we store the beach sounds and a title to a section instance, and we store it in the sections array. Okay? So we're going to declare that this is going to be a variable of type sounds from the sounds class, and let's start with the ocean. And so let's bring this out a little bit. We'll say, okay, we need to allocate sounds and we need to initialize it. Okay, so that's done. Now we can access our properties of ocean by typing ocean dot, and remember the little trick escape, and that'll show you all of your properties here. And we need to say, eventually we're going to say we need a sound icon, a title, a description, a file type, and a file name. But in this case, we're just going to set sound title. We're going to make it easy and simple first. Sound title equals, let's say, a calm ocean. and ocean dot sound description equals, and we'll say a relaxing set of Pacific waves rolling into shore. Cheesy, but it works. Okay, now let's make another sound. So we're going to say sounds seagulls equals sounds allocate init. Okay, so we allocate another instance of the sounds class and we call it seagulls. So we're going to say seagulls dot sound title equals, plain and simply, seagulls, and then seagulls dot description equals a few seagulls fly near the shore of the beach. It's exactly as it is in the app. Okay. So it looks like I might have, yep, okay, so I mistyped. Again, that syntax is great. So we have sound description, uppercase, and then it looks like I put another error up here by not including that semicolon, so make sure you put that there. Okay, so that's what we need for the initializing of the beach sounds. Now, this NS mutable array, beach sounds, which we declare in the .h file, needs to have these objects of these sounds placed inside of them. So we're storing each instance of the sounds class into this array, which is going to be stored as an array in an instance of a section class. Okay? So we're going to say beach sounds, insert object, ocean, at index 0. Arrays start with index 0 and move upwards. Okay, now let's do it again. Beach sounds, insert object, and we'll say seagulls at index 1. Okay? So that is all that we needed to do. Now, like I said, we're going to take that mutable array and we're going to insert it into a section instance. Okay? So I put in comments here, add the sounds to the section with a title. Okay? So we need to declare an instance of a section class, and we're going to say this is the beach sounds section, and we need to allocate it. So we're going to allocate an instance of the section class, allocate, initialize. Okay, so that is done. Now we need to say we can access again. Remember, we can access the properties of a class once we've allocated it in code. So dot and then escape, it'll give you everything that you need if you're starting to look for it. So we know that we named it section title, and that's of type NSString, so we can call this the beaches section. Now we need to set the array, and we're going to set that equal to the beach sounds array. So we have beach sounds section dot section array is equal to beach sounds. Okay, so now we have done everything except insert the section instance into the sections array. Okay, so what we've done, just to overview, we've declared an instance of a sections array which is empty at this point. Okay, so if we come down to initializing the beach sounds, we say, okay, we're going to have an array here. I don't know what's going in it, but we're going to have an array of objects. Okay, we then declare two instances of the sounds class. One is called ocean, one is called seagulls, and we set the properties of that class, sound title and sound description, appropriately. Now we left some blank. We're going to go back and fill them in later. We then insert both of those sound objects into this beach sounds array. So this beach sounds array is now holding these two objects. Okay? Then if you remember correctly, we said we want to have a section class that holds a title and then an array. An array can hold any amount of objects, and it can even hold classes, okay? Because a class is an object. So we take the section class, we allocate it, and then we say, okay, this is going to be titled beaches, and we're going to hold the beach sounds array. So we now have an instance holding an array and holding a title, and the array happens to be all of the sounds. So now what we want to do is we want to insert this into another array. So we're going to say sections insert object, and we're going to insert this into beach, and we're going to insert, the beach sounds section, which is a section holding the title and the array of sounds. So sections, insert object, at index, and we're going to say, we could say 0 to make things easier, but what we're going to do right from the get-go is we're just going to say I++. And the reason we're going to do that is so we don't forget to change this every single time. Now, looks like I have, right. So the I++ hasn't been declared yet. And so if we go to the very top of our class right here, we're just going to go ahead and say int I equals 0. So every time we insert this, it's just going to add +1 to the array, and we don't have to worry about making sure it's right and that kind of a thing. Okay? So we now have one full section. Now we have to add section 2. And this should be pretty painless because we've already done the first section. So let's copy this right here. And we're going to say this is going to be, and you can see why it's important to separate this, initialize thunderstorm section. Okay? And the first thing we need to do is, again, we need to declare another NS mutable array, which we already have set up here, and we called it thunderstorm sounds. So we're going to go ahead here and we're going to say thunderstorm sounds equals NS mutable array. We're going to allocate it and we're going to initialize it. Okay? Now we need to declare another instance of the sound class, and that's so we can set all that individual sounds properties. So let's do storm and rain. So we're going to say sounds storm equals, and we're going to initialize the sounds class. And now we're going to set all the individual properties. So storm dot sound title equals, and this is going to be rain. Now storm dot sound description equals rain tapping the bedroom window as it falls. Okay. Put another D here, and we've got that. Okay. So now let's make rain. Okay. So we're going to say sounds rain equals, let's make these even just for organizational reasons. So sounds rain, so we're going to declare another instance of the sounds class. So sounds, you guys should be getting pretty good at declaring these by now. Okay, so now we say rain, rain dot sound title equals, and we're going to call this pouring rain, and that's because we have multiple rain noises that we're going to get going. So we're going to call that pouring rain, and then we're going to say rain.sound description equals dark clouds roll in and begin pouring rain. Okay. So we'll save that. Now what do we need to do? We need to insert both of the sounds instances into the thunderstorm sounds array so that we have an array of sounds which is going to be inserted into the section. So we're going to say thunderstorm sounds insert object storm of type sounds, and we're going to say this is at index 0. Okay, then we move on. Thunderstorm sounds, insert object. This is going to be object rain at index 1. Okay, and last but not least, we need to add these sounds to a newly initialized instance of the section class. Okay, so add the sounds to the section with a title. Okay, and I mistyped that up here, so I'm going to fix it. Not that it really matters, but it does to me. Okay, so section, and we're going to call this one here thunderstorm sounds section. So we're going to declare a new object type, initialize, it's of section, of type section. So we've now initialized that, thunderstorm sounds section, and now thunderstorm sounds section, and we're going to set the title, because again it's got properties in this class, equals, and we're going to say thunderstorm. Then we're going to do it again, thunderstorm sound section dot section array is equal to, and this is going to be thunderstorm sounds. Last but not least, we need to take the original sections array, sections, insert object, and we're going to insert the thunderstorm sound section at index I++, because that gets added. Okay, so we have now typed in both of these sections here. We have our sounds, and what we need to do now is configure the table view, which is actually pretty simple to be able to read these sounds. So if we come down our table view, we're going to look for very first number of rows in section. So if you do Control F, number of rows in section, and we have originally put 10. What we need to put is we need to initialize a new instance of the section array, and we need to get that by getting the section number of the array. So it sounds confusing, but what we'll do is we'll go ahead and type it out. So current section. So we got to get our current section, okay? And we can get our current section because this integer value here says what section we're in, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. And so if you remember up here, we declared a sections array, which is accessible throughout this entire file here. So if we get the matching section number, so section 0, section 1, and then we look at the array, section 0, section 1, we're going to know exactly which section we're dealing with at the specific time that the method is called. So section, current section, is equal to sections object at index, and we're going to say this is section, because section is again going to display a number, an integer specifically, and so we're going to pull the object at index section, which will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's going to give us an instance of the section class, which is going to have a title, which is going to have all of the sounds accessible in an array, because that's how we stored it. Unfortunately, we don't need that part right here in this method. What we need is we need to return the current section dot section array and count. Now, if you remember right, the section array is an array of all the sounds. So we counted how many sounds were in that section array, which in this case it will be 2, and we returned it. So we got the current section, depending on how many sounds are in each section, and we got the sounds, and then we returned the number of sounds in that section. So that's going to be the number of rows in the section, because we only need as many rows as we have for as many sounds. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to go to the cell for row at index path, and that's going to be right up here. And we need to title the cell whatever the section is. So again, we need to get the current section, and so we can get that by, let's just copy this, save us some typing here, and let's come right up below this if cell equals nil, and let's paste that right there. Now, the only thing we need to do here is remember the index path gives you the section and the row and everything that you need to know to get a certain path detail on where you're at. Well, index path also has a property called section. So we know what section we're in. We can pull the current section based on the section that the table view is calling the method in at that time. So section, current section equals sections object at index path.section. So now what we need to do is, if we're looking at a specific cell for row at index path, we need to know exactly what sound we're dealing with. So we have the current section, but then I need to know the sound. Is it section 1, row 3, section 2, row 4, section 5 row 2. I mean, it could be anything. So we have the current section, but that doesn't help us unless we get the sounds. So we need to declare a new sounds instance, and we're just going to call this current sound. And we're going to say that this comes from the current section. Then we have to access the section array, which is the sounds. And we're going to say object at index path.row. Remember how useful that index path is. It gave me the section, it gave me the row. So now we know exactly which section we're in and which sound it's in. Okay, so now what we need to do is we just simply need to say cell.textLabel. We're going to come back here and modify this with the custom with the custom UI table view cell here in the next tutorial. But we're just going to go ahead and say that the text is equal to the current sound dot title. Current sound, I'm sorry, dot sound title. Okay, now I know we put the description in. We just put that in for the next tutorial, but when we compile here, it should show us all these sounds. So we should see 4 rows in total. But before we do that, we have one more thing we need to do, and we just need to pull out the title for header. So instead of saying test, we want it to say what we named it. And again, I just copied and pasted what we had before. Section, current section equals sections, object at index. And we just simply need to return the current section dot section title. Okay? Because there's only one title for a section, so we don't need to dig even deeper. We have this section, and the section has a property called section title. So that's what we return. So now, if we run this, build succeeds. It's going to come right up here. Let's rotate it. And now we got it basically working, but there is one more thing that we need to do, which I forgot about, and we just need to declare the number of sections in the table view. So we're really close. Let's go ahead and close out of this here. And if we come back to number of sections in table view, I see it right there. I completely forgot about it. If we simply just say return sections count, that's going to give us the number of sections in that sections array which we declared at the top. So let's go ahead and save and recompile, and we should see here, let's rotate it, there we go. And that is great. So you can see here that we now have different sections, different categories, different sounds in each different section, and the table view is now going to automatically adjust when we go to our arrays at the top and insert new sounds. So it makes it easy to add new content, even though it's static, that we put it in the master view controller.m, that we type it in manually and not load it via XML or something. But it does make it easier to import XML if we have to do this in the future. So the next tutorial we're going to focus on the master view cell, and that's going to be a class that we're going to create, which is going to override, inherit the UI table view cell, and that way we'll be able to customize our cells to have icons and descriptions and anything else that we want. So that's going to be it for this tutorial. My name is Zach from mycodeteacher.com, and we'll see you in the next one.